Thank you, Winthrop Development Consultants, for being the champion sponsor of the Dynamics GP track. We appreciate your support in making DynamicsCon Virtual happen. Here we go, Doug Community.
Welcome to DynamicsCon Virtual 2024. Deep dive into a world of knowledge where our Microsoft Dynamics 365, Dynamics GP, and Power Platform superheroes are ready to guide you through the ocean of possibilities. This multi-track voyage is completely free thanks to our heroic sponsors. Explore the hidden treasures of our roundtable sessions throughout the conference by navigating to the Roundtables tab in the left menu bar. For even more pearls of wisdom, swim over to the event info section on the Home tab and discover the expanding depths of our Dynamics user group community. All right, explorers, let's set sail and make waves in the world of Dynamics. Next, please welcome veteran DynamicsCon speaker and Doug webinar presenter, David Laster. Today, he will showcase his session using Power BI to discover bad data in Dynamics GP. Please stick around after David's session for a live Q&A.
There we go. I think we finally got this thing figured out today. Welcome. Thank you for coming to my session today, and thank you, DynamicsCon, for having me. It's a pleasure to be chosen to be part of the presentation today. I do see there's technical difficulties. Can you see me okay? I'll check the chat here. Hope it comes through. All right, woohoo, okay. Well, let me get going here. I believe that I'm sharing my screen, so I'm gonna get right into the presentation and get to the good stuff. My name is David Laster. I will get this out of the way. I'm the Director of Software Solutions at a company called Graybach. We are north of the Boston, Massachusetts area, and I've been in New England for about 25 years. I have truly enjoyed my journey with Dynamics Great Plains. Started in 1999, so I've got over 25 years of experience with GP now, and I really enjoy reporting. Power BI has fascinated me for a really long time, but before that, it was all about financial statements, the income statement, the balance sheet, cash flow. It was management reporter. SmartList came along, and it really got to this point where, I just kind of dug accounting, no pun intended. But here we are today. I get to present on one of the things that I really like doing, which is using Power BI for things that you might not think you can do with it. So we are going to use Power BI to discover bad data in Dynamics Great Plains. And nobody ever has bad data in Great Plains, right? Well, you might be surprised. You might stumble upon it from time to time. But if you had a way of detecting that before it caused problems for the end users, it might make you feel like a superhero. So I have a free Power BI report. I'm going to go through a lot of that today so you can see a number of the different places that you can use Power BI to get more and clean more out of your environment. Now, let's stop back and think for a second, right? Everybody thinks that Power BI belongs in a corner office, right? The CFO really loves the dashboards. He really loves looking at his KPIs and his stoplight graphics. Well, the truth is, Power BI is a fantastic reporting tool, and Great Plains is geared up very well for you to connect to it. This is just an example of some of the types of dashboards that I've been able to create over the years for both myself as a Dynamics GP implementation and support consultant, but also for customers who have a need to solve a problem or to get to some information a lot more efficiently. So I've got a lot from all of these that we'll talk about today, and I'll give you the dashboard when it's all said and done. Now, I do have a new product that I've just kind of finished up here almost, and it's using Power BI to extract and analyze data that's in your GP record set for master records. And I know Great Plains is a fantastic ERP system, but I know someday some folks might be looking at management or looking to Business Central. So I'm really trying to put in an effort here to educate people on the master records and cleaning those up. And I think Power BI is a fantastic way to do it. So I have got some neat stuff to share regarding that. So some of the learning objectives for today, we want to use Power BI to discover data issues before your users do. That's like the holy grail, right? If you're the system administrator or you're in charge, finding out something that's gone wrong before it causes trouble really can add a lot of value and save a lot of time and cost for your organization. Power BI does that. It also provides transparency to problematic situations because Power BI can be shared with your organization through a Teams channel or through a mobile application or other means as well. So other people can understand and see where things might be going wrong. We can expose adverse data conditions where like things are missing or things are cross-referenced. And we can enhance your GP sysadmin capabilities. Power BI reaches into a lot more than just debits and credits in your financials. And when you put a little energy into leveraging the Power BI capabilities for finding bad data, you'll see that you're going to be able to correct user behavior faster because you'll catch batches when they're posting incompletely quicker with the Power BI report. You'll be able to, fend off, you'll have fewer support cases because you're going to be able to detect problems in the data set before people call you or do a support ticket. We're also looking at, improved data integrity, right? When you have good, clean data, then fields flow to the right places or values that should exist in pick lists do exist in pick lists, things like that. It keeps a lot of less headaches, of course. And then labels, sales invoices, purchase orders, AP checks, when you print with all the right information because you've found where things are missing and backfilled them with Power BI, it can go a real long way to getting you into an optimized environment. And the other thing is it's a better end user experience. Like when you're looking through your data, it's nice to have some level of completeness and reliability on the system. It all starts off in SQL. Right. In the database side of life here, you are engaging with multiple tables and multiple sessions and, of course, multiple databases, right, in the Dynamics GP ecosystem. So one thing that happens, from time to time, and this is one of the free dashboards that is in this free dashboard kit you can get, is bad sessions and dropped users, right? Sometimes your user session in Great Plains might be deleted through the activity table, but you might still have a SQL session ID out there that it was born from. Sometimes you might have the opposite, right? You might have a SQL session, no SQL session, but you might have an activity record in GP. And it's important that those things kind of work in lockstep with each other because of the way that the information transacts inside of Great Plains. So there are plenty of other ways that you might be able to leverage Power BI, but this one shows a little bit more than just the activity table. Right? It shows some important information about the database, like who the database owner is. In case somebody restored a live database over a test database, that's something that you can detect before initiating a service pack or an upgrade or something. So other bits of information about SQL are really important to know about. And it just starts off here with the user experience, bad sessions, and such. One of the things that comes out of audits, and this is born out of a number of questions where customers were looking at things that change in security, since the last audit, last year, last quarter, or whatever it was. So it was important for try to find a report. And thankfully, Great Plains, it doesn't have great smart lists for security types of reporting. Power BI can do it. To try to find created date and modified date on certain records in Great Plains, they've done a good job of putting both the created date and time and the modified date and time. Sometimes they're in the same field, sometimes they're in different fields. But with security, at least, if somebody comes to say, hey, show me the list of new users, you can run that down or users created over a time span using a simple filter type mechanism at the top of the Power BI page. So two very similar types of reports. You can build one for one purpose and then leverage that by duplicating that to something that you've already spent time on and then swapping out the data objects that you're trying to talk to so you can get more information out of the system in a unified way using a look and feel across all of the dashboards that you create. So company records, right? The company database, some environments have one. I even work with companies that have more than 500 GP databases. And it's a lot of data. That's a lot of opportunity to potentially have stuck batches, right? So this is a Power BI report that you can use to broadcast, if you will, not just batches that are not available, in other words, stuck or in process, but it interprets the problem with the batch, right? When you look at the SQL table, it just gives you an integer. It doesn't necessarily tell you like what happened to it. But this list that I have on the right it's a list of translations from those codes into words so that you can kind of figure out and know a little bit more about a crash batch kind of situation. When you merge those two in the Power BI model, now you see the actual integer from the stuck batch, but you also will see the words, and it can certainly be helpful. It's pretty common sometimes to have like a static list of values or reference values inside of your Power BI model. So don't be afraid, to do that. If you have a reference list that might provide some intelligence, then by all means, do so in your model. Detecting Power BI bad payment terms in this example is where, you've got customers and vendors. And the reason for this is that you want your agings to look right. You want your aging documents to flow well, and you want your new documents, for the most part, to try to inherit a good set of payment terms. So sometimes a user may go into the company setup record and delete net 45. You can do that. There's nothing stopping you in Great Plains from deleting net 45, even though you might have 10 customers assigned to net 45 payment terms. So what this report does is that allows you to see where you have customers assigned a payment term that actually doesn't exist in the company setup. So, clean up the data, make sure that if it's really needing to be there, you go back and create it, and then the report can refresh and recognize that that term, in fact, does exist. So little nice things here to aid in your cash flow so that you don't let cash out the door too soon, but that you're also seeing your aging buckets on your customer records as appropriate as they can be. So in the financial area, right, we can build financial statements, and we can build KPIs based on, account balances and activities and things. But there's a lot more in the general ledger that we want to make sure stays whole. So I've experienced, and I'm sure you have a number of times too, where you might have transactions, general ledger transactions. They're pretty simple, right? At the end of the day, they're pretty simple. They've got essentially a header record, and they've got, some lines. The lines are the debits and the credits. And if you have a header record, but you don't have debits and credits, you have an incomplete journal entry, right? You can't post that because it needs to have a balanced type of situation. And then sometimes you might end up where you have lines, but you don't actually have the header in the header table. So you can do SQL queries to find where this kind of thing exists. And it surfaces when you're in smart lists a lot of times. When you're running a smart list and it looks up, you see it over here, but you can't find it when you go to the transaction lookup window. So those are the kind of ghost situations that Power BI can help find. In this specific dashboard, right, on the left two columns, we're looking where we have a header and no detail, and a detail but no header, like I explained. But the right side, the general ledger account framework, it's actually looks and kind of shares two tables, the GL master and the GL 105, the index table. So they join on the index, and sometimes you might end up, and it's rare, but it sometimes can happen where you might have a record in one table but not in the other. And Power BI can surface that before it becomes a problem with management report or with running a trial balance or something down the road. There's definitely other Power BI reports that you can put into, a dashboards that you can create. And I have some suggestions on the left side here. And a lot of these are really based off of our familiar smart lists, right? We run a smart list and we add a bunch of filters to it. But you can't really write it as good of a SQL query, okay? So I like writing SQL queries and putting those in the reports that really run each SQL query, but all at one time in a dashboard. And I'll show you that in a minute. This is kind of a fun one. You may, I analyze customer data quite a bit, and I use Power BI to get a real warm and fuzzy sense of what their chart of accounts is like. In this one anonymous example here, I connected a very simple list to essentially an Excel spreadsheet that they had given me. And I wanted to analyze their chart of accounts because I might be looking for bad data, right? Well, the first thing obviously we notice is that it has 260,000 general ledger accounts in the system, okay? Well, I don't necessarily know what's good or bad data here, but it allows me the opportunity to start to engage and say, okay, you have company 1, company 5, company 6. Do these still exist? Do these not exist? And then work through the process of inactivating some of those or doing whatever cleanup might need to be done. 260,000 accounts in a smart list is going to take some time. So you can leverage Power BI to kind of look at certain things one element at a time just to make sure that you have all the records flagged appropriately that you would like to. Moving through the core financials into payables. and purchasing as well. So a little bit of purchase orders in addition to AP. Vendor approval, in my experience, is typically not a big thing, but it's an important thing. Generally, only certain people in your organization should have the capability to create new vendors. Okay. And sometimes there's a workflow out there that allows for vendor approval to occur before you can use transactions on those vendors. Sometimes everybody's a super user and anybody can create a vendor. Well, then you open the doors for fraud and unwanted things. So what I like to do is have a Power BI report that flags down new or changed vendors for somebody who may or may not be responsible for kind of analyzing and keeping an eye on the flock. You never know where fraud may come from. You never know when, nefarious activities may be going on. But if you do keep an eye on it, and it's very similar to a smart list, but if you have all of those smart lists in one Power BI report, that's completely mobile. You don't have to be logged into Dynamics GP to see all that information and so forth. So payables transactionally here. I use the word ghost or phantom every now and then. We've all experienced it, I'm sure, if using GP for any amount of time, where the transactions that have debit documents and then credit documents applied to them, they sometimes apply and then somehow mysteriously disappear, but the remaining amount moved to zero. Sometimes you get these apply records that might be in the wrong tables. So there's a number of SQL queries that you will see when you blog these questions or search for these questions and you find SQL queries, or you may have a library of these, from the past. If you put those in a Power BI report, when that whole thing refreshes again, you'll be able to detect if these kind of things occur. So in this case, we're looking for, we have orphaned apply records. And an orphaned record it's like a ghost record. It's like it looked like it was applied, but it's not really attached to anything. So the credit documents and debit documents need to net to zero once fully applied, but every now and then a network hiccup or some sort of a crash, if you will, during a posting event might cause one of these things to be off. And they're fixable. They're definitely fixable, but the whole point is to use Power BI to detect those. A couple of other suggestions here on the left. Sometimes people go through payment runs and they don't actually print the remittances. So, GP wants to make sure it spits out a remittance for everybody just to make sure they know what they got paid for. But this, you can look for when that happens, because you can run a SQL job that goes and then deletes them just so that they don't stand out in the queue out there. So some pretty neat things to keep an eye on the payables side of life. Payables keys. The keys is a topic that essentially kind of think of it as a tracker, right? It's tracking every transaction that flows through payables, right? What vendor is it? What document is it? What kind of what amount is it? There's a couple things on there. It's like 3 or 4 things. So it's keys records, and sometimes they break or they go missing. And it's usually the result of of some side of crash, right? A posting crash or a network hiccup. What happens is, and what this dashboard is doing for you, is it's looking at 2 types of situations. And keys records are tough sometimes, but this will expose them all. The top one is looking for duplicates. And a duplicate key is a situation where a transaction really lives in it lives in 2 tables, right? It can either live in work, open, or history. It can't live in more than one of those. So when accidentally a record is left behind and we ended up with a situation where we have, in this example, a document that was left in work or in open in history, it tells us the vendor and the voucher number, so we can essentially, do something about that, because you can really, you're going to need to clean that up on the SQL side of life. This was born out of a whole list of SQL scripts that I found online and have used over and over again. And I just embedded them and then codified these in here so that you can have this for free and not have to run those SQL scripts one at a time anymore. At the bottom of this is a broken key finder. Sometimes records get started, but not completely. All right. Every record needs to have certain things, or it's more or less a ghost record. Sometimes when you run check links, it'll say, some messages about cleaning out keys, or a key was not found, or whatnot. So this finds them using SQL queries before you run those events or end up with problems. So purchase orders, I said there was some purchasing involved, of course. Just like journal entries or receivables transactions, you can have headers and lines. All right. And sometimes you'll see this in smart lists a lot, where there might be purchase order headers with no lines or lines but no headers. And I typically have to go into SQL and confirm that, and then go into those specific SQL tables, and kind of clear those lines out. It's doing no harm in a lot of ways, but they could show up on reports or they could crash a report. But worse, that kind of data that's left behind and exported from a smart list and included in a total on a report you're giving somebody, if it's really not tied to a real purchase order, it's ghost information, and it might cause you to do something that you didn't want to do. So keep your purchase orders clean, and this is one way you can do so. On the sales side, right, customers as well. Oftentimes there's a customer approval process, right? Are they creditworthy? Who's going to be their credit manager? Who's their salesperson, and so forth? Not everybody's fully integrated with CRM to, Dynamics GP. So, sometimes there's a lot of fingers on keyboard to create customers. And you want to make sure you put the right contact on there, the right address, phone number, because when you send those invoices, obviously you want the correct address and information on there. New customers and modified customers. This is in parallel, right, to the payables vendors list that we had, and allows you to just see and detect any changes or any new customers. Thankfully, the created date and the modified date are two really good fields in these tables that allow us to kind of sniff that information out. So if you're not using workflow, even if you are using workflow, this may be a way to audit that workflow using a Power BI report. For receivables transactions, again, the corollary, if you will, we have the orphaned apply records, where you might go in and apply a payment to something, and then when you go drill in, it's not there anymore. This detects orphaned apply records in both the open tables and the history tables. So when you do your paid transaction removal at the end of the month or quarter or year, all those applied transactions that are in the open tables move to history. But those orphaned apply records, they can exist in either place. So this one Power BI report gives you, clarity to see both of them. A couple of ideas here you have on the left, right, is especially the multi-currency receivables. The AR for multi-currency is stored in a different table. So sometimes there may be some problems with the current remaining amount on those versus the current remaining amount on your regular open RM tables. So just some ideas, a lot of great things you can do with Power BI to find where you might have some problems in your system. So sales order processing, obviously still on the sales side. A lot can go on here because you have a lot more table structure. You've got a lot more movement. You got probably a lot more people and a variety of other integrations that may or may not be sending data into the SOP tables. Periodically, when you're posting, you may end up with some open transactions or posting and ended up not really fully clearing out, and you end up with kind of some duplicates out there. This Power BI dashboard allows us to go look where you have sales headers but no lines, or where you might have sales lines but no header, right? We want to make sure that we are having clean documentation and record sets, because again, these are embodied in the smart lists. So you might be seeing them and reporting on them, but not knowing that it's disconnected. All right, so some pretty neat stuff you can do with this without even looking at what you're selling or the quantities or the units or the prices, right? This is just all really about data integrity. So bank rec, of course, sticking with the core module theme set, right? This is another one of those dashboards that'll come in here for free if you like that. It's this, there's a lot of things that we want to keep an eye on for cash. In fact, one of the most reliable and one of the most powerful dashboards that my company has written and relied on for a long time, is we call it the cash board. And while it reports on a lot of the cash balances and ins and outs and, bank balances and all that kind of over time and stuff like that, there's other stuff about banking and checkbooks and setups that's probably important to know about your GP environment. So, the setups of accounts. This dashboard will tell you if you have the same GL account used on more than one checkbook. And usually that's a no-no, but it's a possibility. We have seen it. And if it is one of them active and one inactive, right, you can go through that analysis just to make sure that you don't end up with kind of a weird reconciliation situation. We also have a number of things that you can detect through this dashboard and adding onto it a little bit more. The lower section on this is a little bit more refined, right? This has the stoplight icons and approach, so you can see a lot more in terms of what is good, green, right? That bank rec has been done recently. Whereas maybe the yellow ones, it's been a while, and the red one we've never done a bank rec on before. I know there's some setup items here across all of your checkbooks. And I know there's a number of organizations that have a high volume of checkbook IDs, one per every state or, one per every entity or something like that. So to get a bird's eye view of a lot of this stuff in SmartList, sometimes you need to write your own queries. So use this Power BI dashboard instead to pull that information out. All right, make sure your checkbook settings are in as good optimal shape as possible so that you can get the most out of the banking module itself. So this is a bad data detector that we've been sharing and talking about. It's been out there. I've been giving it away for years. I am happy to connect with you and help you get it working. The first page of the document of the dashboard looks like this. Let me show that to you. I'll pull that up. First page looks just like this. This is the actual dashboard right here. And the first thing about all my reports is that the first page has my instructions or a little README because I want you to get connected without a whole lot of trouble. But the instructions on how to get connected are right here. But they essentially are, relying up at the top here to edit your parameters up at the top, put your SQL Server in, put your Dynamics database, and then your company name. And then as soon as you're done with inputting your credentials, you can hit refresh, and then all the data that I've been sharing today in this dashboard will light up on this on these pages for you with your information. It's not multi-company, so it just does one company at a time, but you can always run it and save it as, and then have that information available as company 1 or company 2. And then you can build alerts on this kind of stuff. You can publish it out to the cloud ultimately by hitting publish. Then you can read it through a Power BI or through a Teams dashboard type of approach so that many people in your organization have the ability to get there. So I usually have a number of people follow up. Please reach out, let me know via email or LinkedIn or whatever it takes, because I want you to get the benefits of using this. It is absolutely free. There's what that first page looks like for instructions, so you can get a good look at that one. I also have updated the What's New dashboard. Another creative way of using Power BI and maybe solving some of the administration problems that you have, or maybe some of the support issues you have might be solved with a new function or a new feature. And this is another item that's free. Creative way to use Power BI. I have that open right here to show you what that looks like. This product is something I really enjoy doing. The folks at Microsoft have put out an amazing amount of effort into the Git repository for all the documentation, the email troubleshooting guides, even the developer information is all landed out into a great place, and we don't need to rely on the PDF reports as much anymore. So ultimately, when the new features come out every year, I take a few minutes and I go through and I update this master spreadsheet that I have that's got hundreds of lines on it now. And then I republish this back out for anybody to have and use. And yeah, it's a little bit subjective, but what I do is I try to say, all right, I'm a GP user, and I codify each of those new functions and features for like a purchasing user or a treasury user or something like that. So you can use this in a number of ways. Let's say you're getting ready to upgrade, let's say from 18.4, and you're going to go to 18.5, 18.6, and 18.7. With Power BI, this is a living, breathing report where you can hone in on just what's important for you. And if you see some information along the way, like, ooh, a new window, we can drill into this and click on the browser link, and it will open and take you right to that what's new piece of information that Microsoft has been putting out to the cloud. So pretty interesting stuff. I love updating this, and I really get to know the new features pretty well. And I want you to be able to have the opportunity to do so as well. So let's do this. Again, absolutely free. And if you have any questions or insights into this, I'd love to get your feedback. I want to say thank you for taking the time to come into my session and watch today. I'm going to be opening it up for some Q&A here in a few minutes, just in case there's any out there. Again, my name is David Laster, and I absolutely love working with Dynamics GP and Power BI, and I'm also a certified Business Central consultant. So happy to take questions and even maybe show a couple of dashboards for the remaining time if there are no questions along the way. Let me get caught up here, guys. Thank you. I'm happy to make the slides available. Yes, I made some edits. I'll make sure that I save this and that the folks at Doug have the updated copy. But yes, absolutely. In fact, I've got plenty of slide decks and so forth that would be great to get into the Power BI and Great Plains mindset, because there's, again, so much that you can do on this. Let's see. Oh, I've got a question here. I've written stored procedures that email out reports containing data issues to different departments. These blocks are executed by SQL jobs on a schedule, some over time. I'm interested in converting these to putting them in a Power BI dashboard. Okay, I think it'd be a better user experience. Okay. Are those, okay, if I was to put these on a dashboard, are the queries executed real time against the production database? Some of the queries take a little while to run, so I'm wondering if it would be able to set them up to only refresh on the dashboard once a day. Others run quickly, and I see no issue in letting them run real time against production database. That is a great question. I do actually have, and thank you for that, WC. The process would be as follows, right? To do that refresh. Power BI desktop application would then need to connect to your data sources, get worked out and refreshed, and then published to the cloud. You'll have to install the enterprise gateway, which is a secure service that I typically would install right on the SQL server that takes and encrypts information from the cloud where you've published your actual report in the cloud that you're sharing with people, right? Instead of emailing out reports, you're sharing it from there. They will then, on the schedule, every once a day, every 4 hours, or whatever you would like, that will initiate a refresh. The data will refresh. It'll send it right back. And then the data model refreshes, the tiles and everything update, and you're able to see the refreshed report. If you have multiple reports out there, and then some of them take longer than others, by all means, stagger the schedule of those, schedule them for off-peak hours, of course. But when you hit the refresh button, yes, it does run real time. And that's the beauty of it, is that you can run it real time locally on your workstation anytime to refresh data. But you can also sort of set it and forget it once you set up the gateway and publish to the cloud in that manner. One other comment I have, because you bring up a really good point, and it's something that I like and rely on, is the you said you had a stored procedure. One thing that I learned early on with Power BI is that it's not just a select from accounts table. It is way more than that. And I started to experimenting with that, and I was able to, execute some stored procedures, like to find information about two examples. Number one is let's see, SP underscore who2, I think is, or SP underscore help DB, right? Those are great stored procs that are just native in SQL. And when you run refresh in Power BI, it goes and it executes those stored procs if you're a user that has exec permission. It doesn't just let any read user do that. If you're read only, you can't exec those. So you want to make sure that your user has that enough permission in order to do that. The other thing I'll point out that I think is kind of neat is we have helped a lot of folks with receivables, heavy receivables. And the receivables reporting in Great Plains, everybody relies on the agings, and they don't excel well. I think that's fair to say. So we've excelled those reports through SSRS like the rest of the world has, I'm sure. But we've also taken the historical age trial balance stored proc and put that in Power BI. And we have parameters in the Power BI report that allow you to essentially then choose what you want to run it for. And then if you need to pass any, otherwise they've got hard-coded parameters. So it defaults to current date, it defaults to all customers. So 4 times a day, the historical age trial balance is executed. And then we've created all kinds of neat reports off of it. I was fortunate to be able to share those recently, but I think that there's a lot of power in using stored procedures in Power BI reports for GP. So great point there. Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Thank you for that. All right. Well, I look forward to hanging out in the other various sessions today and being in the GP room here shortly to converse with everybody that's around. So, good deal. Thank you.